Welcome to the Superheroes Everyday podcast. I'm Danny Horn. Thank you for joining us. Superheroes Everyday is a comedy blog about the history of superhero movies, starting with Superman the movie in 1978, and telling the story of how superhero blockbusters became the world's most efficient way to painlessly separate money from the public and then give it to entirely the wrong people. On the blog, I'm writing about the movies in release order, but here on the podcast, we'll be covering pivotal moments in superhero movie history. Today, we are addressing the 1995 Val Kilmer, Joel Schumacher film, Batman Forever. Just to make this clear, these episodes are long because we're talking about the whole movie, so I'm using the Sid Field 3-act structure to break up the episode. So this is Batman Forever Act 1, and then I'll be releasing Act 2 and Act 3 later on in the week. Now, I want to introduce my special guest. This is Ryan Roe from the Muppet fan site Tough Pigs and the Muppet Movie Podcast, Moving Right Along. Ryan.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hooray, I am thrilled to have you. Do you want to talk about yourself and your projects?
Well, as it says in my Twitter bio, I'm one of the guys from toughpigs.com, co-owners of that Muppet fan website, along with Joe Hennes and Jared Fairclough. That website, of course, founded by one Danny Horn.
Yeah, that's why we are friends and colleagues.
Yes, exactly. Lately, most of my efforts on Tough Pigs have been devoted to the Moving Right Along podcast, which I host and produce, co-host that with our friend Anthony Strand. And that is a podcast where we watch Muppet movies 2 minutes at a time. Every episode is us talking about 2 minutes of a Muppet movie.
And you've been doing it for, how long have you been doing the podcast?
Well, we're just wrapping up Muppet Christmas Carol. I want to say we started the Muppet movie in like 2017, maybe. We had some kind of long breaks between seasons, but yeah, hopefully we'll get into Muppet Treasure Island a little bit faster.
When did you first see Batman Forever?
Right. So this is an interesting question because as I was preparing for this podcast, I was trying to think back to the first time that I did see this movie. And I realized I wasn't sure that I actually saw it in the theater when it first came out. I was 14 when this movie came out, so I was definitely in the phase of like if it's a PG-13 blockbuster, I have to see it. You
went to go, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm also the kind of person who very often remembers like where did I see a movie and who did I see it with, and I still can't remember that for this movie. So then I was thinking like, did I actually see this in theaters?
It sounds like repressed memory.
Well, it's weird.
Like there's something that is surfacing. If there's a red leather book that comes up in your dreams about this, I actually do have a Malaysian dream warden that I was planning to give you. And so it sounds like you do really need one.
Yeah, I've been having these flashbacks of walking into the lobby and asking for one ticket to Batman Forever. It's really weird. And dropping my popcorn, like popcorn bouncing off the ground in slow motion.
Off the ground,
yeah.
Yes. All right, well, that dream warden's in the mail.
Oh, great, thanks. And then I realized it doesn't really even matter because when this came out, the actual movie was sort of secondary to the entire overall experience of it. Like,
yes,
there was the merchandise, there were the toys, there was the McDonald's tie-in, there was the soundtrack. Everybody had the soundtrack. You couldn't turn on MTV without seeing the music video for Kiss from a Rose by Seal and the U2 song. So, yeah, there was just so much
So you were part of that experience.
Yeah.
Well, let's run the numbers. The movie came out June 1995. It was the third Batman film out of 4. There was Batman in 1989, Batman Returns 1992, otherwise known as The Good Ones, and then Batman Forever 95 and Batman and Robin in 1997. First two were a big success. Batman was number 1 in 1989 with $251 million. Batman Returns, a little lower, number 3 with $162 million. And then Batman Forever did great. Number 2 for the year, $184 million. But it did not do so well with the critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, Batman's got 72%, Batman Returns 80%, and then Batman Forever 42%.
Oh.
But that is still well above the next Batman movie. Batman and Robin has 12% on Rotten Tomatoes. So really did not do well.
Yeah.
And that was like number 12 for the year. It only made $107 million. And it basically killed DC movies for the next 8 years.
Yeah, I think the stink of Batman and Robin sort of rubbed off on Batman Forever and like made people assume that it was worse just because it's like so close to this one.
We got to talk before we get into it about McDonald's and Kenner Toys.
Right.
Because, like you said, that was really the whole experience is kind of built around the merchandising. McDonald's actually is super important for the making of this film because they were really pissed off about Batman Returns.
I have heard about this.
They decided it was too dark and too weird. They made Happy Meal figures, not really knowing what the movie was going to be like. And then it came out and it was real violent. Apparently, the thing that really pissed them off was there's like that the penguin like
he bites a guy's nose.
Bites a guy's nose.
Yes.
Yeah, and has like black stuff coming out of his mouth like a zombie. So there's this Christian watchdog group called the Dove Foundation who made a stink about that and criticized McDonald's, and McDonald's felt really burned by it. And they were a big promotion partner. So for the third movie, Warner Brothers promised them they would be able to review the script. And they even had influence over the costumes.
McDonald's did.
McDonald's did, yeah. And they get the first line in the movie. So we'll do that in just a second.
Yeah, that was in every single commercial. Yeah.
So they made, for this movie, I don't believe they did a Happy Meal. They had a superhero burger. And then they had the Gotham glassware collection, which was these 4 sculpted, like, quote unquote, like chiseled in high quality glass. Batman, Robin, Two-Face, and the Riddler, all of which are now broken, I'm sure. And then there's Kenner and the toys. Now, the funny thing, the narrative around this is that Batman and Batman Returns didn't have as much merchandising. But I remember I had a summer job at a comic store in 1989 when the first Batman movie came out. It was unbelievably merchandised.
Yeah, I think of that one as being massive. That logo was just on everything.
Everywhere. Yeah, including the back of people's heads. I don't know if you recall this.
Yes.
It was a big thing. Summer 1989 basically was like Bart Simpson t-shirts and people with the Batman logo shaved into the back of their head.
Exactly.
We don't have trends like that anymore.
No, because stuff like this doesn't hang around like that. It's like even when a massive superhero movie comes out, it makes a ton of money in its first weekend, and then people are talking about it for maybe 2 more weeks, and then it just disappears into the ether. Yeah.
So people who were not around in 1989, I'm sure that like you cannot picture it. You can't picture just like walking around in the city and just seeing people with the Batman logo shaved. It was not just like one person. It was like so many people. It was a very strange thing. But like in the art versus commerce polarity, the narrative is that like Warner Brothers says like, okay, well, that was art. Those two were art. Now we're doing commerce. And Batman Returns, like, fair enough, was not as action figure friendly.
No, and that one really seems like, okay, Tim Burton, you made us a lot of money with the first one. Now we'll just let you go crazy and do whatever you want with the second one. And then he made the second one and they were like, oh, no. That's not what we meant.
Yeah. So the Kenner toy line had like one Catwoman figure with a whip and then a Penguin action figure, which didn't look like the one in the movie. And Robin, who wasn't even in the movie. And so it was like Kenner Toys and McDonald's were both like, dude, you got to do better by us. So for this one, they wanted characters who were colorful and wear interesting costumes. So Warner's basically said, we need 2 costumes for Batman. We need 2 costumes for Robin. We need 2 villains, multiple costumes. We need multiple vehicles, multiple hideouts. There were 4 series of action figures, which I'm going to tell you all about right now.
Great.
There were 17 Batman figures overall. Blast Cape Batman and a Fireguard Batman, Manta Ray Batman.
Oh, you're saying there were 17 of just the character Batman?
Different specifically Batman, yeah. Ice Blade Batman, Power Beacon Batman, you know, like I can just keep going and going. Like Night Flake Batman, Wing Blast Batman, Recon Hunter Batman.
Honey Nut Batman, Apple Cinnamon Batman.
Yes, exactly. And that's not counting like the Robin figures and the Riddler figures and the Two-Face figures, of which there were many, as well as the obvious like Batcave and Batmobile and Batboat playsets.
Right. There are 3 vehicles, 3 Bat vehicles in this movie.
So the movie made $184 million at the box office, and the merchandising was $1 billion.
Yeah.
So that is basically what this movie is about. And so that takes us into Act 1, beginning of Batman Forever, which is basically starts with a commercial. Well, first up, like just Batman is just suiting up. We see the Batmobile. This is actually stuff that we've seen before in previous films, but there's a lot of music that makes you like think that it's majestic.
Yeah.
As Batman kind of like just walks around the houses.
Here are my keys. Here's my wallet.
Exactly. And then the first line in the film is that Alfred the butler's there, and he says, "Can I give you something to eat before you go?" And he says, "I'll get drive-through."
Right.
His first line in the film, that is there specifically for the McDonald's commercials, which, like you said, just then got played endlessly. That's how important McDonald's was. So Batman, he's driving, he exits the tunnel, and we end up in Tokyo, I guess.
Or the city from Blade Runner.
Or the city from, yes, yeah. Nighttime Gotham City and daytime Gotham City are very different. You don't see a lot of daytime Gotham City, but it's New York, like actual streets. And then nighttime Gotham City, a lot of Japanese neon signs. Mm-hmm. Very unreal. A lot of like neon soaked Dutch angles. So what's happening is we introduce Two-Face. Two-Face is actually where I draw the goddamn line.
Oh, do tell.
On this movie. Two-Face used to be the DA, got splashed with acid. We don't find this out at the beginning, but he's all purple on half of his body and then normal on the other half. It's Tommy Lee Jones, who is usually good, doing a villain monologue.
Yeah.
With this poor security guard who's like a little turtle flipped over on his back. And he flips a coin. So the thing with Two-Face is he's got this coin and one side is normal and the other side's all scratched up. And if he flips it and he gets the scratched up side, then he murders you.
That's tails.
That's tails. And if he gets heads, then he flips the coin again.
Right.
Is how that works in this movie.
He's not supposed to keep flipping the coin until he gets the answer he wants. His whole thing is that, yeah, it's like he's split. He doesn't know if he should do this thing or that thing, so he flips the coin to decide. And here he's just like, I'm going to keep flipping the coin because I'm evil. Both Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey are sort of just like, oh, we're Batman villains, so we'll just act like we're insane people. Which is kind of, I feel like, came from them seeing Jack Nicholson as the Joker in the original Batman. No, he's just playing it as a maniac villain.
Meanwhile, out on the ground, Batman arrives. There's a whole bunch of Gotham City people looking up and pointing like they do. Commissioner Gordon's there, and then Nicole Kidman, as a very pretty lady, is there.
I don't want to go too much into this, but I will say again, I was 14 years old, a straight boy when this movie came out, so this was a highlight.
The second that we see her, she's like cranked up to 11 already. Introduces herself as Chase Meridian, which sounds like it should be a pun.
It sounds like a kind of a James Bond name.
It should be like a joke name.
Yeah, and in fact, I remember seeing an interview with Nicole Kidman when this came out where the interviewer said, Chase Meridian, what a moniker. And she just laughed and was like, yeah, that's what I said.
She is the temporary blonde for this movie. You're not supposed to get too attached to them because there's a different one in every movie. There was like Kim Basinger in the first movie. There was Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns, and now Nicole Kidman, and the next one's going to be Alicia Silverstone. It's weird to me that they keep putting love interests in Batman movies. Yeah. When, like, the one thing that you know won't happen is Bruce Wayne being married and happy.
He's never going to settle down. See him. Yeah.
No. But Chase is super into him. She's looking at him like she hasn't had a drink all year long. She is supposed to be there. Gordon says she's here to come to Gotham to work on the Two-Face case.
By the way, can I just interrupt very quickly? Pat Hingle plays Commissioner Gordon. Is he a bad actor?
Is he a bad actor? Or is he is he just drunk all the time?
Maybe.
It's hard to say.
Because I've always thought of him as just being one of those like old reliable character actors. But in this, a lot of times, it just seems like he's reading his lines for the first time. Like, I forget, in this scene, there was something like, Two-Face is up there, didn't see this one coming. It's like, oh, do you want to rehearse that? Do you want to try that one again?
What's funny is I was paying so much attention to Chase that you're absolutely right, and it didn't occur to me. Yeah, no, he seems real drunk the whole time.
Yeah, maybe it's just this particular role. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, he says to Chase, like, can we reason with him? He's holding innocent people up there. And she says, it won't do any good. He'll slaughter them without thinking twice. And I'm like, okay, what service are you providing, Dr. Meridian? Standing there. And she's like, she doesn't care. She's really just like trying to vamp on Batman.
Yeah.
hey, there's people in trouble.
Nothing we can
there.
do. That's my expert
Yeah.
opinion as a criminal psychologist or whatever she is.
I thought here stories were perfect and powerful. But I guess in this case, I guess that's not the case right now. All right, upstairs. Meanwhile, upstairs, Two-Face crashes a wrecking ball through the wall, and is it a bank vault? This kind of like...
I think so.
Do they have bank vaults at the top of skyscrapers? Because I thought usually it was more a basement kind of thing. Batman goes up the elevator. We don't actually see it. Just occurred to me of like, oh, he must have gone and stood in front of the elevator and pressed the button and waited, which is not a thing that we see. He just comes up on the elevator, and Two-Face is up there with these endless number of faceless henchmen.
He has so many.
They just respawn like it's a video game. You just kill 5 of them, and then there's like another 5. And he looks at the elevator door and says, "Blast him!" And they just shoot at the elevator. Elevator doors open, and Batman's okay. Boom. And so he comes and he fights with them. Action scenes in this movie, I feel, are not that easy to track. They're very dark. I think that's partly because like the suit was really hard to move in.
Oh yeah, it must have been.
Yeah, Val Kilmer said that it's basically this like block of rubber that he stands in. It's not that flexible. He said that just like it was hard to move, that basically they just had to place him somewhere. Can't really hear in the suit because there's stuff over your ears. He said it's like this incredibly isolating experience. And basically what I had to figure out was my job is just for them to position me somewhere, and I'm just supposed to stand there and do that. And so the fight scenes are all like constructed out of like on a frame by frame basis. Like he leans over and like kicks.
Right, like you see his leg raise up in one shot, and then it cuts to a shot of his foot hitting the bad guy.
Yeah, we're positioning it somewhere. 2 gadgets in this particular event. One of them shoots cartoon electricity at people.
Yeah, and it makes them go,
which is amazing.
Yeah.
And then the other one, I guess, is probably the first like toy that we see is like Series 2, this like batarang Batman with the spinning batarang and radar system. We see that the suit, the Joel Schumacher suit.
Yes.
Do you want to address this at all?
I assume you're referring to the fact that it has nipples.
The muscles and the nipples.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Very sculpted muscles.
Apparently, it's supposed to be like a Greek statue of a hero. That's why you have like very detailed muscles, and then you have the nipples on it, which really bothered people.
It was in every review. I feel like this one and maybe the nipples are even more prominent in Batman and Robin, but
they are.
It was so talked about when these movies came out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so odd because Batman Forever is trying so hard to be a middlebrow crowd pleaser. Like, they want the McDonald's customers and kids who collect action figures. They hired the hot comedian, and they're trying so hard to craft this mainstream blockbuster that'll have as broad appeal as possible. And yet Joel Schumacher made this one design choice that I don't think anybody appreciates. Like you said, like everybody mentioned it in the reviews, and people said that it was supposed to be gay or it was a fetish thing. Roger Ebert said the dominant images are fetish gear. But this movie doesn't appeal to gay people at all. Like, I'll come back to this in Act 2, but for right now, just as far as I know, there's very little in this movie that was of any particular interest to a gay audience. So the nipples don't serve the story. They don't serve the character development. They don't appeal to anybody in the audience, and clearly they act as an irritant. So I think people just keep coming back to the nipples because it just seems to be this weird personal quirk of Joel Schumacher, which feels almost self-sabotaging. And I think that's why people were kind of fascinated by this particular choice. Batman enters, there's a security guard in there who I think is named Admiral Akbar. Batman gets in and he's like, "It's a trap." They fall and it swings out into the street.
Yeah.
The security guard is incredibly annoying. And he's like, "Oh no," which is just not a line that you like hear in nature very often. And then Two-Face is in a helicopter holding the bank vault on a chain. And then there's all these like superhero movie New Yorkers down on the ground looking up, which is what they do best, just like waiting to be crushed to death by whatever is about to fall out of the sky. And then there's boiling acid.
Yep. Gotta have boiling
that
acid.
shoots into gotta have and the security guard somehow identifies it by smell. He's like, oh no, it's boiling acid. There's a lot of acid too. His acid budget must just be off the charts.
I'll also confess that I've seen this movie a handful of times. I'm not entirely sure what the goal of Two-Face's plan is here, other than just to kill Batman, I guess, like to sort of lure him up to the vault and then dispose of him.
Trap him in boiling acid, I guess. Why you need a helicopter for that, I don't know. Yeah, so the security guard, like, his glasses fall off. He has a hearing aid. His shoes are melting. He's just a mess. This guy's a total mess. Batman manages to get out of the trap, but it seems like everything's fine. After that, there's kind of like this swing through computer-generated Gotham City.
Yes.
Which is like a cutscene from Myst.
Yeah, I was actually about to say 1995 CD-ROM graphics.
Yes, it really is.
Yes.
They could have done that as a model. They had to go with CGI.
They sure could have, yeah.
And it lingers. That shot shouldn't even go on that long, even if it looks good. So now we're in Wayne Enterprises. Bruce Wayne walks in to the science pavilion, which basically like this huge wind tunnel with science tables in it. That is how science works. If you walk into any kind of like science center, every scientist has a table, and they just kind of work on that. And there is Edward Nygma. I forget the actor who's playing him.
I think the name you're looking for is Jim Carrey.
Oh, that's Jim Carrey. Oh, okay. He disappears into his role, so it's hard to.
Yeah, you'd never know.
He starts out at 10, and it turns out I don't even know what the top of that scale is. It's like 10 to the 10th power or something. He goes up and up and up. So Jim Carrey, at this point, he became well known originally on the sketch show In Living Color, which was 1990 to 1994. And then he had 3 hit movies in 1994.
Incredible that they all came out within months of each other.
Yeah. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
February.
There's The Mask.
The Mask in July.
And then Dumb and Dumber
in December, the same year.
Yes. And so that's 94, and now this is 95. So this is like peak Jim Carrey is in love with himself.
Oh, yeah.
But
so is the movie-going audience. People couldn't get enough of this mugging. He's giving people what he thinks they want in this role.
He's very, very funny. And he's incredible. Like, he has the most unbelievable, like, precise control over his face and his body, his reactions to everything, his line reads. Like, he can do basically anything. If he could only have done like 20% less. Like, the most suspenseful thing in the movie is when Jim Carrey has a good take, and then you're just waiting to see if he's going to ruin it or not. And that's when we see Val Kilmer now as Bruce Wayne for the first time. I feel like not a ton of charisma coming out of him, especially in these early scenes. Val Kilmer just feels like he just has very few expressions.
Yeah, I think he just doesn't know what to do to distinguish Bruce Wayne from Batman.
I mean, everybody looks like they're not expressive enough when you're standing next to Jim Carrey, but still. Edward Nygma has this invention that he's very interested in showing Bruce Wayne, and Bruce is not very impressed. Thinks that his brainwaves invention sounds insane, which it does.
It also looks like basically like a metal hat with a blender glued on top. I'm pretty sure that is actually a blender.
It's a very confusing machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say, though, just to be sure, I do love the blender hat. Like, I think it is fantastic that they just glued a blender to the top of this thing and said, okay, yep, that looks like a brainwave reader.
The bat signal is in the sky, and there's Dr. Chase Meridian in, I guess, a negligee. This is one of those movies where you just postulate. Like, Chase, standing on the roof, wearing next to nothing, somehow managed to break into the police station. Now she's on the roof because she's horny. This is a crime. When you're committing a felony, I feel like you're not supposed to let people know that that's what you're doing. But she has turned on a floodlight, which is specifically designed to bring law enforcement to this exact spot.
Well, she doesn't have his phone number, so she couldn't just text him, "You up?"
She's coming on to him super strong. She says, I know you like strong women, or do I need skin-tight vinyl and a whip?
The reference to Catwoman is interesting because these 4 movies are pretty much self-contained. Like, you wouldn't really need to have seen Batman Returns to understand this movie.
Well, something that I think is really interesting here is how casual it was that they're recasting. If you recast a superhero now, it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
You have to reboot the universe and come up with like the whole concept of a multiverse. And in this series of 4 movies, it's like, no, we just recast the dude. Like, we can have like the same Alfred and the same Robin and the same house.
Yeah, I think people just didn't care. And it was sort of exciting just to be like, oh, who's going to be the next Batman?
Ed Nygma is at work doing furious science. His boss, Stickley, shows up. Ed knocks him out, like you do in movies, puts crazy headgear on him. Now, the brainwave machine is supposed to, I guess, make 3D television.
Of course, we all know the Riddler is a supervillain whose identity is
Yes.
built around leaving riddles as clues. So naturally, in this movie, his identity is built around making people experience TV.
He says through the entire movie that he is taking in information and intelligence from the people that he's like sucking brainwaves out of. We do not see that at any point. He just gets shoutier. There is not a single moment where we see him where it's like, oh, he's smarter now. He doesn't have access to more information. He doesn't have access to more personalities. Yeah. Like, even the Scarecrow in The Wizard of Oz can demonstrate, like, I'm smarter now. This is basically like a sub-Scarecrow level of social realism. He does one of my favorite things that Jim Carrey does in the movie. Once Stickley is conscious again, he says, like, oh, I'm reporting you to the FCC, the Human Experimentation Board, the police. And like, he does like 4 things. And each time Ed does like a different, like, ooh, which just, it's beautiful. Like, it's like an athletic event where Jim Carrey can do like 4 different reactions that are all funny, completely different from each other, completely like poised and strung together. He's very good. It can be beautiful things. You have to stop watching it. For me, it's like you have to stop watching it as a movie and just watch it as like an athletic event. Bruce has to go into Wayne Enterprises for the crime scene, and then he gets this riddle, which is really, I think, really neat looking. Like, each riddle is sort of this little art project.
Yeah, it's like a homemade pop-up card.
You're supposed to think that it actually matters and means something. The answer is a clock.
Yeah, this is the thing. The riddles are as if they got to the end of writing the script and they were like, oh yeah, the Riddler is supposed to do riddles. Let's just throw in a few riddles and yeah, that way it'll.
And then it's daytime, which is actual New York. He's going to see Chase. There's a lot of like flirtiness and heavy breathing and long looks at each other.
Chemistry between them is almost there.
Yeah. And then there's this doll, the Malaysian Dream Warden. She's got this bifurcated thing, which she says is a Malaysian Dream Warden, which it sounds like it might be a thing, but is not. I looked it up. As far as I can say, it's not actually a thing. And she says, some cultures believe she protects you from bad dreams. And I'm like, well, Malaysian cultures, I assume, mostly. My question is, why does she have one, though? So then he invites Chase to the circus, to a date at the circus in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
Apropos of nothing. I really got to get you out of those clothes. She said, excuse me? And into a black dress. Tell me, doctor, do you like the circus? Which is like, that joke is comfort rated for 4th grade, I feel. And then it's the circus.
A circus that does not look like any circus that would ever exist. Once again, so many Dutch angles. Everything is like neon painted.
And then there's the best character in the movie, Gossip Gertie.
Yes.
Elizabeth Sanders, Bob Kane's wife, who is actually in 3 of these movies.
I saw that on IMDb. She played Gossip Gertie in this and Batman and Robin,
yes.
And she played...
And Batman Returns.
Like Gotham Citizen number 4 or something. Yeah, like...
And she's amazing. She's like, Bruce, who is this beautiful young woman you're with? And Dr. Chase Merton. A doctor? What kind of doctor?
And he doesn't answer. Neither of them answer her question.
Why would you? But Gossip Gertie's fantastic. I feel like that is not even... Nobody directed her to act in that way. And that feels like that's how Gossip Gertie shows up on the set. This movie takes place in a lot of different spaces.
Yes.
And Gossip Gertie has entirely her own.
Yeah.
They introduce the Acrobat family.
The Flying Graysons.
The Flying Graysons and Dick Grayson, Chris O'Donnell, who looks like weirdly feminized in this scene in a way that he is not later. I think like the movie has kind of a hard time figuring out whether Robin is masculine or feminine.
Interesting.
He's got an earring, which is potentially like both bad boy and possibly kind of gay. We're going to see a lot of butch Dick Grayson, but not like the film kind of has a hard time figuring out who he is visually.
Yeah.
My question, why would acrobats wear eye makeup? They're all wearing makeup, and it feels to me like that's a waste of resources. And then Two-Face shows up, and many of his henchmen. He just makes me angry. He makes me angry every time. And so I'm like, who are you, and what do you want, Two-Face?
I really think like his motivation in this is just kill Batman.
But that's not even what he's doing. He's just at the circus. He just shows up at the circus. And he starts talking about like chaos and justice.
Yeah.
I don't know what he means by justice. And he was a DA too. It really bothers me. Two-Face bothers me all of the time. He has all this dynamite. The audience is very polite under the circumstances. They all keep their seats. You would think you'd have a stampede or something, but no. Acrobats to the rescue. So the Flying Graysons try something to help. Bruce ends up like in the ring decking baddies just as
right. Well, there's
Bruce.
this giant bomb conveniently located, I guess, where the Graysons are able to kind of manipulate it. And
well, it's getting hauled up on a wire, and they're up there, so they're like, cool, we're gonna do something about it. And Dick gets the bomb and kind of brings it up on the roof, and the family falls. Two-Face like kind of shoots their wires and they fall and they die. Dick is very cool, and he manages to like roll the ball off into the river, which explodes. And so now Dick Grayson's the hero. But then he comes back and his family's all dead. So he's orphaned and abandoned.
How old is he supposed to be?
Real hard to tell.
How old was Chris O'Donnell, actually? I should have looked that up.
He was born in 1970. So 25. But he's an orphan and needs to be housed somewhere. Real unclear why he shows up at Wayne Manor. I guess the Flying Graysons didn't have life insurance, which seems unwise for acrobats.
It's probably expensive, though, because they have such a dangerous occupation.
I guess that's true. There'd be like really high deductibles. Dick says, like, thanks for taking me in, saves me from like social services and charities. How old is he, though? This is a question. And he's got a marketable skill. And, by the way, I hear the circus is hiring.
He could just be the Flying Graysons now and hire some new people to join.
Yeah, he could hire some new people to be his new family. Nope, doesn't do that. No, he decides to go live with some rich dude. And yeah, it's real unclear kind of like what Bruce and Alfred want out of this. They are amazing at the thing that they're about to do, because he wants to leave. This is now butch Dick Grayson, who's got like a leather jacket and a motorcycle, and he is not emotionally available. And Bruce is like, come and get gas and like my motorcycle museum. And they go in, and it's like Santa's workshop, that there's just like all these like, wow, really like old classic motorcycles that he happens to have. The amazing thing is then like Alfred comes in with lunch, which is just like a hamburger and French fried potatoes
on
and
a
like
very fancy tray.
Steak on a very fancy tray. And Bruce is like, well, no, I don't think he's going to want that lunch. And Alfred's like, oh, well, I guess I'll just give it to somebody else. And it actually like lures him in.
It's like the smell, like a cartoon aroma of the burger goes into his nose and he follows it.
Yeah, so it's like between the motorcycles and the burger.
Like, it's lucky for Bruce that Dick is into motorcycles, because
motorcycles and hamburgers.
What if he had been like, I'm a big fan of, I don't know, vintage ping pong tables.
Well, he probably has one. He probably has some of that
yeah, you're
too.
probably right. He has everything.
It's a mansion. He probably has everything. Yeah, I don't know.
Come look at the ping pong room.
They must have done this before, is all I'm thinking. Because like nobody is this good at seducing troubled teens like the first time out. like they are here. This is possibly the thing he's best at. He's not good at catching criminals. We find that out in this movie.
Right.
For about 2 hours, we see him not catch criminals. What he's amazing at is luring troubled teens to live in his house for no reason. So then there's a flashback where Bruce is remembering his mom, and we see the pearls go everywhere.
Yes, the much derided inevitable pearl bouncing flashback now, yeah.
This is only the second time that's happened so far. I went and looked into this. The pearls originally come from the Dark Knight Returns comic, the Frank Miller comic in 1986.
Really? They had never been seen in a flashback in a comic or a retelling of his origin before that?
Nope. It was Frank Miller. But then it shows up in 7 movies. There's Batman in 1989 was the first time. And then this is the second one. And then it's in Batman Begins. Uh-huh. And there's a Batman Year One animated film. Dark Knight Returns 2013. Batman v Superman in 2016. And then Joker in 2019.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Dick is unpacking in his room. And Alfred, sort of helping, sort of standing by and kind of drooling. And he notices he has this helmet with a picture of a bird on it. Is this a robin? He says. And Dick has this story that doesn't make that much sense about I saved my brother Mitch when he was falling. My dad said I flew in like a robin.
Yeah.
Which is not a thing.
No, I mean, he could have named any bird. And then that would have become Dick Grayson's superhero identity.
I guess so.
I flew in like a toucan.
But Alfred says, oh, your father was right. You're a hero. I can tell. Alfred is clearly in charge of licensing. He is working directly for Warner Brothers, I feel. The question in this movie is, what is Alfred's end game? It feels like he gets everything he wants. He is the big bad of the movie. All right, so then is the scene that I think is the most bizarre, which is the Riddler figuring out his costume and his identity. But he has all this Riddler merchandise.
Yeah, the Riddler is already a fan of the Riddler. He has a bobblehead.
And a Jack in the Box. And then in his house, this huge carnival fortune-telling machine. Who is the Riddler.
Yeah.
And it operates on its
wearing
own.
the whole costume, yeah.
So how does he have all this Riddler merchandise?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Who is this character and the reality?
Yeah, and he's going through all these different options of maybe I'll be the puzzler or the gamester or question mark man.
And the fortune teller machine is pointing to either the no light bulb or the question mark light bulb.
And it really seems to be in charge. Is this in his head or? I have no theories. I know that I shouldn't be angry about this scene, and yet I am. That's where we are. So now he's the Riddler. He shows up at Two-Face is having his own weird little dinner party that doesn't make any sense. The Riddler shows up, and at this point now he's just doing everything. With his 1966 green outfit and a hat with question marks all over him. Pink hair, which is new. At this point, every line and every facial expression is just going to be as exaggerated as possible.
Yeah, it's you thought he was a lot in The Mask. This is, multiply that by 100, yeah.
Yeah. They make a bargain. And then they go and do crimes.
That's what they do. They are stealing money and valuables, diamonds. Using Two-Face's crime expertise so that they can fund the Riddler's mad science, I think.
Startup.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, he's got startup, and Two-Face is a VC. This must be crypto. This must be Web3, because it's all just the VC is just funded with theft. But my real question about the sequence is then they're just counting money in the car. They've got all these jewels. Where is Batman during any of this? Batman seems to have a very laissez-faire attitude to crime fighting. In this movie, in order to get Batman's attention, you have to show up someplace where he already is. Otherwise, he just stays home and watches it on TV. And even when you do that, he still lets you go.
Yeah.
I don't believe that he stops any crime at all, including the many thefts and hostage situations that happen right in front of his face. He does not arrest these people until the very end of the movie. He doesn't arrest anybody. Dick Grayson does laundry.
Yes.
This is, for me, this is the best scene in the film. I love the martial arts laundry scene. He is so much fun. And I like the tank top. I'm not gonna lie. He's super cute in this scene where he's got like she's like the socks are nunchucks. He's just having a super amount of fun.
He wraps I don't know if it's a shirt or a sweater or something. He kind of wraps it around his leg and then yanks on it so all the moisture drips out of it.
Yeah.
So he's taking laundry out of the washing machine and doing all of this to hang it up to dry on a clothing line. I think there is a dryer right there next to the washing machine, but he's just, why do it the easy way?
And so, it shows off all his like superhero ninja skills, which is super cute. Bruce gets another riddle and they look at it, and this is one where it's a chess pawn and they kind of like are mulling it over.
Yeah.
Bruce and Alfred, they're like a clock and a match and a chess pawn. They're all physical objects. They're all man-made. What's the connection? None. This has nothing to do with anything. There's a press conference, and Ed Nygma is telling the world about the box, which is his blender helmet, which projects brainwaves from you into him. It's a weird moment for me, because his hair goes from like spiky pink in the previous sequence, and now he's just like fully coiffed and he just looks like super slick.
Yeah.
It's not really easy to track what his actual deal is or how his ability to function in the world, which kind of changes from scene to scene.
Why his hair is changing,
Why his hair is changing. But we see people buying it, and then we see the Riddler like with his helmet and sort of like chomping on brainwaves. This is another toy. There's the Riddler action figure with brain drain helmet. So, with Kenner Toys happily scooping in another addition to their product line, that is the end of Act 1 of Batman Forever. I'll be releasing Act 2 later this week, and it is worth waiting for. Here's what's coming up. Batman Returns was the gay Batman film, because it was perverted and funny, and it was all about being transgressive, and like Catwoman like skipping with her whip in the department store is like the gayest thing I've ever seen.
That's what inspired it, in his adulthood. But now he's realizing, like, oh, wait, I just remembered. I saw a bat another time.
I think that's what Joel Schumacher was making, was a musical. And once you realize that, like, everything else kind of makes sense.
I'm a man who uses the symbolism of a bat. I'm a bat type of a man.
And he says, I guess we're all two people. One daylight and one we keep in shadow. And my question is, are we though? I kind of feel like I'm one person. I don't know. I just hang out. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, Ryan. I'll meet you back here for Act 2 of Batman Forever on the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening.
Edward, you're dashing and a genius. How do you create these images, hon?